the moment he pressed the only glowing button. (1930), location Elmsbury. He had actually time-traveled. It was his father, Henry, 18 years old. 3 times in the past week, Jack was sure he'd been followed. On his walk home from school, just a blur in his peripheral vision. One crucial document that explained the full mechanism in controlling the watch. Violent buzz. The display flickered, and the air seemed to rip apart. Massive. This is the story of a boy. At 17, he felt like life in the quiet village of Elmsbury. Jack Carter, who had long given up on the idea of excitement, was stuck on repeat. School, homework, awkward silences at dinner. And evenings spent listening to the dull tick of the ancient clock in the hallway. His father, Professor Henry Carter, once a renowned physics lecturer at Cambridge, now lay paralyzed in the upstairs bedroom after a stroke 3 years ago. He barely spoke. His sharp mind, once filled with theories about wormholes and alternate dimensions, was now buried behind tired, distant eyes. Jack barely remembered the man his mother used to admire. To him, his father was a rigid, emotionless figure who lived more in silence than in love. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Jack's life changed forever. His mother had gone to town for groceries. The house was eerily quiet, except for the soft groaning of old floorboards and the occasional thunder rumble outside. Jack, searching for a screwdriver to fix his broken headphones, ventured into the attic, a place long avoided and covered in dust and mystery. He climbed the creaky stairs and pushed open the attic door, greeted by cobwebs and the smell of forgotten time. It was a graveyard of old books, worn boxes, lab equipment, and yellowing photographs. One particular trunk in the corner caught his attention. It had his father's initials, H.C. Curious, Jack unlatched the lock and opened the lid. Inside were bundles of notes, diagrams about temporal displacement, and sketches of a strange device, a watch unlike anything he'd ever seen. Beneath the papers lay that very object resting in a velvet pouch. It looked like a digital watch, but heavier, more intricate. The moment he pressed the only glowing button, the attic disappeared. Colors spiraled. Time unraveled. The air smelled different: coal smoke, fresh bread, horse manure. He stood up, dazed. Around him were men in suspenders, women in hats and gloves, and vintage cars that rattled noisily down the street. A newspaper boy shouted, "Elmsbury Gazette! Local teen volunteers at shelter after mill fire." Jack blinked. What year is this? He looked at the watch. It now displayed date, April 14th, 1930. Location, Elmsbury. He had actually time-traveled. Confused and fascinated, Jack wandered the streets, trying not to stick out. He eventually reached a familiar part of town, his neighborhood, but younger. He froze when he spotted a tall, lean boy sweeping outside a community kitchen. The boy had thick brown hair, rolled up sleeves, and a quiet determination in his eyes. Jack's heart raced. It was his father, Henry, 18 years old. Jack ducked behind a newspaper stand and watched, stunned. Young Henry scrubbed pots, handed out food, fixed a broken pipe near the wall, and then spent half an hour helping a little girl search for her missing cat. He laughed with the volunteers, worked tirelessly, and even stayed after others had left, cleaning up alone. This wasn't the man Jack thought he knew. The cold, distant father confined to a bed. This was a selfless, passionate, brilliant young man who cared deeply about people and purpose. Jack's throat tightened. Shame crept in. How had he never known this side of his dad? Just then, the watch buzzed. Return sequence. Initiated 00100. No, wait, Jack whispered. Just a little longer. But the world began spinning again. Jack woke up, sprawled across the attic floor, the watch blinking quietly on his wrist. His heart was still racing. He could hear the thunder still rolling outside. But everything had changed. He had changed. For the first time in his life, Jack felt something deeper than curiosity. He felt pride. He had seen the soul of the man behind the silence, and he wanted to know more. Because the attic wasn't just full of junk, it was full of answers. And Jack had just taken his first step into time. It had been 2 weeks since Jack Carter's impossible journey to 1930. 2 weeks since he'd seen his father, 18 years old, brimming with energy, working selflessly for strangers. Now Jack sat at the dining table, his cereal slowly turning soggy, staring blankly at the wall while the tick of the kitchen clock filled the silence. His mother was upstairs, tending to his father. Was it real? He wondered for the 100th time. Every detail of that day was still sharp in his memory. The smell of coal smoke, the warmth of the sun on cobblestones, the pride he felt watching young Henry work. He knew it had happened. His father had once lectured endlessly about the possibility of time travel, back when his health was strong. Jack had dismissed those conversations as eccentric ramblings. Not anymore. Life in the Carter household carried on much the same. Long silences, but Jack had changed. He was sharper now, restless with purpose. Somewhere in his mind, a spark had lit, pushing him toward something bigger than himself, something for the good of humanity. He began making plans in secret, ideas of where or when he could go next. But along with that excitement came fear. The watch was hidden under a loose floorboard in his bedroom. Every night he imagined what might happen if it fell into the wrong hands. If someone with greed or malice learned its secret, they could twist the future, destroy entire histories. The thought kept him awake. And then there was the shadow. 3 times in the past week, Jack was sure he'd been followed. On his walk home from school, just a blur in his peripheral vision, gone when he turned to look. Worse, the watch's inner workings still baffled him. The diagrams and formulas he'd found in his father's trunk looked like alien mathematics. And he was certain a page was missing. One crucial document that explained the full mechanism. Without it, he was half blind in controlling the watch. Finally, one rainy evening, Jack decided there was only one way to find that missing page. Go back to 1930 and search the attic then. He pulled the watch from its hiding place and pressed the activation button. Only something went wrong. The familiar hum turned into a violent buzz. The display flickered, and the air seemed to rip apart. Jack's vision went black. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on damp earth beneath a crimson sunset. The air was thick with the scent of wild grass and smoke. No buildings, no roads, just endless plains and distant mountains. From behind a rock, something moved. It was massive. Beast with jagged teeth and eyes like burning coals. It roared. Lunging at him. Jack froze until a stone slammed into the creature's head. A boy, barefoot, wearing animal hide, grabbed Jack's arm. "Run!" They dashed into a cave. Hearts pounding. The boy pointed to himself. "Abe," he said in a deep, cautious voice. Jack understood instantly. He was not in 1930. He was in the ancient world. 10,000 BC. a time when humans lived in caves and hunted to survive. For hours, Jack and Abe sat by a small fire, trying to communicate in fragments and gestures. Abe seemed fearless, but knew nothing beyond the life of hunting, fire, and shelter. Jack kept glancing at the watch, waiting for it to pull him home. It didn't.